Mr. President of Green Crescent and dear Chair, dear participants, possibly being the youngest speaker in this symposium, I'm very honored to be here with all of you. And as like Simona said, also my field experience is much more than my scientific background. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about more the field study that the field case that what youth has been doing and what could be possibly a better method for prevention when it comes to the substance abuse, to reduce the rate of substance abuse in the field. So my name is Enes, as like it said, and I'm the president of youth NGO from Bursa, Turkey, which is named Civil Life Association. We are a member of Alcohol Policy Youth Network, as the Simona is one of the board members, and we are working in the reduction of alcohol, tobacco, and substance abuse-related harm, prevention and reduction. And today I'm going to tell you a possible way of reducing substance abuse and its consequences in a way that we could reach to a point that that the rate of substance abuse is decreased, and at the same time we are adding we are giving some additional value to the young people as well. But to be able to go there, firstly we will need to look through to the definition of what is being young, actually. So according to UNESCO, being young is explained in a way that a transition period between childhood and adulthood, and in the definition of UNESCO, there is no specific age limit mentioned, but when we look to the other sources of information, we can see that, for example, British Youth Council is explaining and defining being young people as being under the age of 31, and European Union national agencies, which are basically the most participative type of youth, especially in the Europe, is defining being young as being with the ages of between 13 and 30. But when it comes to a study which was made by Turkish Statistical Institute last year, in the entry part, it was defined as being in the age of 15 and 24. But when it comes to the youth unemployment, most of the EU countries are accepting the young people as the ages of 15 and 21. So what we can understand from these is that we cannot really put a clear limit between what is young and what is not. We generally consider it as a transition period, as I said, from childhood in the adulthood. And after this point, I would like to tell you what is youth engagement. Youth engagement is the meaningful participation and sustained involvement of a young person in an activity with a focus outside of himself or herself. I think the most important thing here is focusing like outside of himself or herself, like outside of ourselves. So what is a very special thing with youth engagement, and what do we actually mean with youth engagement? When we say youth engagement, we basically mean two types of engagement. The first one is the sectoral engagement. When we say sectoral engagement, it's basically the youth organizations, and it's basically the peer-to-peer education and non-formal education-based type of approaches to the sector. When young people become together to work about something, that could be about politics, that could be about academics, that could be about sport, it could be anything. We call this a sectoral engagement of young people to do something. And there is also a possibility that I'm going to tell you very briefly. It's the individual engagement of young people to the social life. So when we look to the youth sector, we basically have two types of possibilities for the young people. The first one is the youth organizations, and the second one is the organizations for youth. When we say youth organizations, it's basically the organizations which are established by the young people and for the young people, which means that their board members, their members, their volunteers, they're all young people, and they're working for the good of young people. And at the same time, we have a second possible option, which is organizations for youth. These organizations don't have to be youth-led. These organizations can be some professional organizations, as like the example of Turkey. We have youth centers in different cities which are basically funded and facilitated by the governmental agencies. So this is another type of youth sector as well. And what is very important here is also that in the youth organizations, generally the type of education and the type of approach is peer-to-peer education, which is a very basic thing when it comes to substance abuse. Actually, not only substance abuse, but actually, well, anything else which is possible. And giving the definition of peer-to-peer education, we generally say that teaching or sharing of information, values, and behavior in educating others who may share similar social backgrounds or life experiences. peer education is often used to affect change at the individual level by attempting to modify a person's knowledge, attitude, or behavior, or even belief, I would say. However, peer education may also affect change at the social level by modifying norms or stimulating collective action that leads to changes in the programs or policies. And what is basically the special thing with the peer-to-peer education? Why youth organizations are generally based with the background of peer-to-peer education? They're based on the peer-to-peer education because people belonging to the same peer group communicate best with each other. Similar economic, social, linguistic, cultural background, whatever, same background brings a better understanding to young people. And sometimes, since most youth are, at least by the definition, not eligible to hold positions in the power in their society, they find themselves kind of a subject to authority. And it is this power differential that makes communication between adults and youth very difficult. And likewise, it is the equality in power status between youth that makes peer-based communication very, very successful in that way. And when it comes to the individual engagement of young people to the society, we can basically count sports, social activism, politics, or even religious and spirituality. And after this point, I would like to, I would like to go to basics of youth engagement. When we look to the basic of the youth engagement, we generally see that maybe the most important thing here is focusing outside of himself or herself, focusing to the society, focusing to other people, focusing to peer, but not to himself or herself. And with the youth engagement, basically young people perform activity and spend time, generally within a group, in a closed group of the peers, which is a very, very good thing as well to increase the communication skills of the young people. And it talks to others about the activity and organization, and at the same time it improves the skills and, ability to solve problems, ability to deal with problems. And at the same time, he or she is trying to bring others to the society or to the organization or to the activity that he or she is a part of, and he's at the same time acquiring advocacy skills as well at the same time. And of course, he tries to make contacts with others, so he knows or she knows that he or she needs to have better communication skills. So after this point, I would like to ask you how youth engagement can be an effective method for prevention. And to be able to see that, we need to make a look what general types of approaches can be made on youth engagement when it comes to drug use prevention. Well, at this point, we are basically counting two possible types of approaches. First type of prevention could be creating a context to youngsters related to drug abuse and its harms to explain why it is dangerous, what damages it would cause to the user's body and life, and what consequences it would bring afterwards to the social life and everything, of course. And but when we look to the background of this approach, like telling to the young people directly about the drugs and their specifications, when this is consulted with professionals and with experts, we know that it seems like there should be a clear line on where to start directly talking about drugs, with including their names and specifications, with detailed information, because thanks to prevention science and bad experiences from field work, we know that that would, telling directly to the young people about the drugs would increase the curiosity among the young people, and that would cause some effect than we actually expect. And the second possible methodology could be, which is proven to be as efficient as the other one, is without mentioning anything at all about the drugs or addictions, we could basically adapt young people in different activities on social life, and which is meaning youth engagement to the social life other than the peer-to-peer education with the context of drug abuse, without mentioning about the drugs and addiction at all. And now I'm gonna very briefly tell you about a report about the International Standards on Drug Use Prevention. This is a document and standard which was prepared and presented by United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. I hope it's visible. In this document, we basically have all types of possible approaches, and effective approaches, and we know moving from this standard that what is effective on adolescents and what is effective in early adolescence and everything. And preventing education, preventing the young people from substance abuse is basically, for example, we can see that from family we have parenting skills, which is very important, and at the same time, in the down part, we can see that preventing education based on personal and social skills, and this is basically the most common part with the youth engagement, because in the youth engagement, while the person is focusing outside of himself or herself, at the same time, he's developing skills on his social and personal attitude. And this is also the second part. We can see that, for example, school policies and culture is also very effective in the young people. And, for example, addressing individual vulnerabilities or alcohol and tobacco policies. This is something that I would like to mention afterwards as well. For the young people, we are basically implementing alcohol and tobacco policies, but we also need to see how important or how effective it is. So at the same time, in this document, the office is telling us what is the specification or characteristic of an effective method in the young people. So according to the office, a method should improve a range of personal and social skills. A method should be delivered through a series of structured sessions. A method should be delivered by trained facilitators, and a method should be primarily interactive. And we know very well that youth engagement increases the working ability of young people with teaching them how to deal with problems in real way instead of running away when they face with problems. And there is also a good problem-solving skill when it is considered that young people are in risk group when they face with problems, and especially the ones who are using substances generally, generally the ones who face problems and solve the drugs as a problem solver. And also, we also know that in youth work, non-formal education methods are used, which are the most interactive type of education when compared to the formal type of education, like didactic type of education that we are receiving in the schools every day. And also, last but not least, in youth work, there is no teacher, there is facilitator, what's so-called. And it's only the peers who are teaching each other, therefore, and we know that problems with the basic idea of like having equality in common is very easy to solve, and people will adapt each other, like the youngsters will adapt each other very fastly when they're getting the education not from a teacher, but from a facilitator through peer-to-peer education methods. And at the same time, office is also telling us what not to use in the effective methods, and what could be the worst thing in a methodology to keep also inside if we for the ineffective methods. Okay, so at the same time, like using non-interactive methods such as lecturing, which is an example of didactic education methods, and formal education is not effective at all, according to the guideline. And from the fieldwork and prevention science, we also know that formal education is not effective not only in drug prevention, but at the same time in tobacco and alcohol as well. And another thing to abstain on youth work is giving specific information about specific substances, the one that I told you. And that is, of course, causing curiosity, and especially in the early adolescent time, it is causing totally another effect than expected. And our third and maybe most important specification is building the education and investing on youngsters' self-esteem and emotional education. You might think that building it on personal emotional values might be working better, but at the same time, we also know that it is not, because there are a lot of studies showing that when the system is based on the receiver's own personality, it is highly possible that it would collapse when youngsters have problems with their personality, which is also very likely, as adolescent time is a transition period between childhood and adulthood, and generally youngsters on this age group, they're having some very big identification problems and personality problems as well, and they're even having some radical changes from time to time. And when the system is based on this person's own personality or emotional status, and when the status changes or when the personality changes, then the system is directly going to collapse, if you know what I mean. And at this point, coming back to the effective methods, I would like to tell you something which was discussed during our local education program in Bursa last weekend, and that was told from one of our participants who clearly told me that, like in private, he was using drugs occasionally in the past, and he realized something on this standard document. When you see that chart, like listing effective methods for prevention, most of us think that, like for example, the part of youth is youth-based. But actually it is not. This part is, this chart is community-based, meaning like even for the good of youth group, we are investing money to educate parents or to create some better policies to prevent young people from using substance abuses. We are investing money on something, and we are expecting this something to reduce the substance abuse among the young people. But at the same time, what if I ask you, what about directly investing money to young people? If we invest the money to youth engagement, basically, like we will basically reach to the same point at the end. We will have some reduced amount of substance abuse, but on the process, on the way, we will be directly investing money to young people, and they will have some additional skills. Like for example, if you implement some better policies, and if you compare implementing better policies and youth engagement, eventually we are reaching to the same point, but on the process, like in the youth engagement, we are directly investing to the young people. They are developing skills. They know how to communicate with their peers. They know how to communicate with their adults. But in the school, in the policies like related to alcohol consumption, that is also preventing young people from being very addicted to the substances, but it's not adding up any additional thing to the young people. And when I'm completing my presentation, I would like to share you a scientific study which was caused very surprising results, even to the author of it. We know that even though some cultural and legalization differences exist between alcohol and drug, in basic, they have a very big common background. So that study is very interesting to understand how we might be ignoring the real importance of youth engagement. So this study was done by Dr. Komro from US, and he and his colleagues decided to make a social study to prove that when young people are engaged in alcohol-free social activities which are organized by their peers, their drinking habits would reduce. They managed to show it eventually, but there is something which is more important. They also realized that students who organized the activities had clearly a lower consumption rate than the students who only participated in. So if they organized the event, they have basically reduced the amount of their drinkings much more than the ones who are only participating to the activity. And I would like to complete my presentation with telling you how to engage young people and maybe what is the responsibility of adults. For adults, we have to, as a young people and maybe kind of like the representative of the young people, I have to tell to adults here that you have to include young people in decisions affecting their lives. You have to create an opportunity and feasibility for young people to work on social issues and to get adapted to the society. We have to create chances for young people to work closer with adults so they know how they will need to react in the future when they become adult. And we have to actively listen to the opinion of young people and give value to their opinion. And at the last point, I would like to finish my presentation with a basic rule that we always have in our organization and also in Alcohol Policy Youth Network. Without youth, nothing can be done for youth. So thank you.